Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here, and doing another cool Facebook Live for Dog Nation. Just finished up with Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp. We knew we were getting Glenn Schumann. We weren't sure that we were going to get Will Muschamp, and then Claude Felton let us know, hey, everybody stay in your seats, and Will Muschamp came in, and I'll start out recapping that. I mean, the thing I'll say about Will Muschamp, and I said this at the beginning of the year, I felt like the Will Muschamp hire was one of the most important things that's happened for Georgia football. I think in terms of the on the field and the practical application of having an experienced guy like a Will Muschamp that's been at LSU and Auburn and Florida and been a head coach and been a coordinator out there at Texas, and you think about how accomplished of a career that Will Muschamp had as a defensive coordinator and certainly the opportunities he had as a head coach, those sorts of experiences are rare, especially when you talk about having a guy like that in your position group meeting room, and a guy for Kirby Smart that's been a lifelong friend. I think for all coaches, it's really important that they have a guy on their staff that they can look in the eye, a guy that will look them in the eye, that can call BS, right? And that there's enough mutual respect. And don't get me wrong, I get the feeling that Kirby respects all of his coaches, and I sense that there's a lot of open feedback and a lot of open communication. But in Will Muschamp, I mean, that's a guy who's been on the same level as Kirby. And I'm not trying to say who's the better coach or anything like that, but he's been a head coach. He understands the world that Kirby is operating in. He's a pilot that has flown at those heights, to make the comparison. All these guys are pilots, right? But only certain guys have flown the fighter pilots and been the head coach. And Will's been that guy. And so he understands a lot of what Kirby's trying to get done. And so because he has an understanding, he can help him do it. From a practical application, I think having Will Muschamp going into last year was really big when you consider that Georgia opened with Clemson. I don't know that they beat Clemson without Will Muschamp. I know that's a big statement, but consider the background that Will had with Clemson personnel, kids he recruited, and playing Dabo and Clemson every single year and understanding tendencies. And that Georgia defense was dialed in. Now the offense, they got caught off guard. Brett Venables fooled them a little bit. Everybody expected pressure, and Venables dropped 8 all night, and Georgia was not able to adjust on the fly as well as maybe they could have later in the year because you had so many young guys. Kieris wasn't playing receiver yet. He was still injured enough that all he did was return punts. Pickens was out. And, you know, as experienced as JT was, it was hard to communicate with guys like Brock Bowers and A.D. Mitchell making their first start, and even Ladd McConkey, right, who'd redshirted the year. So, but having Muschamp was an ace in the hole last year. And listening to Will Muschamp speak today, I felt even stronger about the importance of what Will Muschamp means to the Georgia coaching staff. And to be clear, they're all important, okay? Todd Monken is, I think most Georgia fans would agree, he's ingenious. He's worth his $2 million. Glenn Schumann is brilliant. He's been with Kirby for years and years, going all the way back to Alabama. I think most people agree that, you know, now that Dan Lanning has moved on to become the Oregon head coach, I think Schumann is that rising star. But I really like the role that Muschamp is playing here. And I'll share this with you. I had someone tell me last year that Will Muschamp was the most popular and beloved figure in the football building. And then I talked to Louis Sean, and Louis Sean gave Will Muschamp all the compliments and even said, you know, it was Muschamp that told him he couldn't do the sheepdog look for interviews, right, for the NFL. You know, he had that trust in Will. And listening to Will Muschamp today talk about, I asked him about his relationship with Kirby. I think most Georgia fans know that Will was an upperclassman when Kirby came in, and Will was instrumental in Kirby getting a job at Valdosta State that helped launch his career, and Will was a factor in Kirby being hired at LSU as well. And certainly we saw these guys compete, and yet everybody knew that Kirby and Will were friends off the field. I think that's still the case. I'm sure the relationship's changed. Will doesn't play enough golf, or doesn't like golf, I guess Kirby says, so that's not where they hang out. But when you've got two guys, as Will said today, that they're similar-minded. Now, that doesn't mean they don't argue about things, he pointed out. He said that's healthy, you know, but having a guy like Will Muschamp is really important. And to me, it was that final piece to me that got George over the hump. was having Will Muschamp. So as far as personnel and what the coaches talked about today, neither one really wanted to single out too many guys, because today is the first day in full pads, and now is really when you can get a more full appreciation and evaluation. You could tell the first week who's in shape, probably everybody. You could tell the first week maybe where some people were at in terms of, their recall or their carryover from spring drills, or how the incoming freshmen were picking things up. So they have a general idea. But today, as Glenn Schumann said, when the coaches are off the field and it's 11 on 11, they're going to find out a lot more. So the coaches were hesitant to really delve into too many details. Will did share that Malachi Starks and Ja'Cory Thomas are indeed working at safety behind Dan Jackson. Somebody asked Will about what he thought of Dan Jackson. He said he thought he was the second best walk-on safety Georgia's ever had. Of course, Will Muschamp was once a walk-on safety back in the day. So Will knows how to have a press conference and entertain and inform, and I thought he did a really nice job today. Just kind of sharing what's going on back there, the way these guys work, the respect that he's got for Glenn Schumann is indisputable. Glenn is a rising star, and Will said, look, I knew of Glenn Schumann, but I didn't really know him until I got here. And he said that promotion was very well earned. And you could tell how genuine he was. And you could tell Will was just respectful and appreciative to be here. He talked about, Del McGee and Schumann being two of the longest tenured guys, and the consistency that they've had at their position. He talked about how cool it is to be back in Athens and be around some other former Georgia players, right? The Mike Bobos, the B-Mac, even Todd Hartley, guys, it's a little bit different. Everybody's professional. Everybody wants to win. Everybody's all in. But when it's your alma mater, it is a little different, and Will shed some light on that. Asking him about stepping back from his previous role. Someone said, I don't know if you've ever been called a co-coordinator. He said, I've been called a lot of things. Of course, that got some laughter out of the room, because Will certainly had his up and down with the media. He's always been a fan favorite and a media favorite, though. I will say that. Guys in the media love Will. His press conferences are always dynamic, and it was fun to hear him today. I asked him about the relationship with Kirby and what he saw in Kirby. He just talked about Kirby the competitor. How bright he is, how he motivates people around him, how tough Kirby is, how he's brought a lot of those elements to Georgia football. But beyond the field and beyond being that competitive guy that we all see in these press conferences, combative even at times, as I've said, you've got a guy that understands the league and understands how the league works, understands the roster management, understands the scheduling, and why wouldn't he? He was at Nick Saban's side for 9 years. He was a part of Alabama's success. 4 of Saban's 6 titles at Alabama came with Kirby Smart. So I think Will has a great deal of admiration and respect for Kirby. That came through clearly. Now, Glenn Schumann was a little more hoarse when he talked, and he had to apologize for his voice. He's already been yelling at these guys. It reminds me of how Dan Lanning sounded last year. When you're that guy, there's a lot of communication and a lot of teaching, and so his voice was a little hoarse. Schumann was really all in on the team talk, to a point where my question was, Coach, I get all the team talk, but can you tell us about some individuals? He said, well, no, listen, that team is really important. It takes everybody to be on the same page for the defense to do what they do. And that's why a few years ago in 2020, I started calling Georgia the no-name defense, because I think after the season, I think J.R. Reed was the only first-team All-SEC guy. This is ridiculous. This is one of the best defenses in the country. And then in the beginning of 2021, and then Lanning made the reference at the bowl game. And then beginning of 2021, USA Today didn't have any Georgia guys on first-team offense or defense in all SEC going into the season. You're like, how in the world does that happen? And, they only had 8 guys drafted off the defense, 5 first-rounders, right? So I think that sentiment continues. I think even though the names and faces have changed at many positions, I think you're still looking at the same type of Georgia defense. Now, I thought one thing Schumann said is you don't really ask these players to replace someone else. You ask them to be the best version of themselves, and then it's up to the coaches to kind of piece it together and figure it out and say, okay, this is what this player does well, and how do we package it? Who's our first down, second down, third down? Who's in pass rush? Who's in third and long? Who's in goal line? And that's what's happening right now, Schumann said. They're trying to sort out who are the best players. in different capacities. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And how do they piece this thing together? And, the defense, on one hand, it's all about creating problems for the offense, but then on the other, it's about solving the problems that the other offense creates. So, you've got to, you've got to be able to do both things. And I think that the sense I got today was that this is a very healthy Georgia defense right now. I felt that watching the G-Day game. I thought that defense looked a lot better than it should have, or that it was supposed to. I mean, Stetson was 15 to 35 for 2 picks, right? And even though Kirby said, well, they didn't have a running game, I said, yeah, that doesn't matter. I didn't see the breakdowns that I would have expected with 8 or 9 new guys out there on defense playing full speed. So I was impressed in the spring. I've been impressed by what I've seen from these guys athletically. We've talked about the physique of the players, whether it's offense or defense. I'll be real interested. There's an availability of viewing today, and I'll go to that here in just a little bit. And Connor Riley has already got some stories up from the press conference. You'll be able to read that on Dog Nation. Connor and I will both be at practice. We'll have plenty of feedback. I can't wait to see how these guys get after it. First day, full day in pads. I want to hear who Kirby's talking about on the microphone. Kirby's telling us, right? He's not just communicating to his players, right? He knows when the media's in there. And who's he going to single out? Who's he going to put on notice? He does it in a playful way, and yet we know that the feedback gets back to the players. Not because I write a story about them or they're in a notebook, but the parents hear about it, the friends hear about it, the former coaches, and they get the feedback and the calls. And, hey, man, I heard Coach Smart was busting on you, man. Yeah, he got me today, but not tomorrow. That's the kind of thing that propels these competitive players forward. That accountability, right? Nobody wants to be singled out. I don't care who you are. Talking to Lewis Seen and Darian Kendrick last year, they laughed about it, right? That microphone doesn't miss anybody. It doesn't matter how big your name is or how many stars are behind your name. If you're not going 110 between drills or at the end of a play, Kirby Smart's going to call you out. That is part of the excellence of Georgia football. And Muschamp said that. Muschamp said, you could count on 2 hands the number of bad practices Georgia had all year last year. He said that you go to a Georgia Tuesday practice, he called it a thing of beauty. Now remember, Muschamp's been on some great teams as a head coach, as an assistant coach. He's been with Saban, he's been with Mac Brown, he's been his own head coach. When Will Muschamp calls something a thing of beauty, it's a thing of beauty, okay? And so just a lot of really good vibes out of today. I'd go to our Dog Nation video channel, go to our YouTube, watch those press conferences of Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp, and I think you'll get the same vibe. I think you'll get the same feel. And I haven't gotten the complete transcription, but that's kind of the things that caught my ear. And we do want to come to you, after these press conferences and give you just kind of quick hits and impressions, what I took away from it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. You can follow me on Twitter at MikeGriffith32. I'll have a story later today. Again, we've got some great content up already. I wrote a story this morning on some storylines at each position. I know Connor's got a live blog up on what was said today, more specifically during those press conferences. And then this afternoon, we'll have some information for you on the availability, the practice viewing. So hope you guys check it out. Hope you have a great week. I'll be on Dog Nation Daily with Brandon Adams tomorrow. We'll check you out then. Thanks.